Good afternoon, Chicago. Woo! We are minus one of our panelists, in case you're wondering. She'll be here in a moment. And we are between you and the door. And for those of you who stay with us for a bit, we have a parting gift for you before you leave, so stay. Lots is said these days. Do we have it up? We do. Lots is said these days about self-care. We've been talking about self-care for the last 2 days, and we're going to offer you some alternative considerations for self-care as we wrap up this conference. I'm Lisa B. Capp. For those of you who joined me in my other talk yesterday, I'm a writer, an activist, and a dementia caregiving survivor after an 18-year journey with my mom before her death in 2015. Dannelle, who you might have heard speak as a brand new caregiving consultant, certified caregiving consultant, is also a former family caregiver for her father-in-law for 12 years facing Parkinson's disease. Dannelle and I are both going to talk about life during caregiving. And the person who is in the chair that's empty, Patnaude, she's the founder of Caregiver Strategist, and she is a certified caregiver consultant as well as a bunch of other accomplishments. And she'll be talking about life after caregiving. We also are going to introduce you to some concepts around self-health, not self-care, because if you were to answer the question, how would you define self-care, what would you say? How would you define self-care? Is it a walk? I have to get outside and walk. I have to go spend an hour in the gym. I have to do something active outside of my caregiving. We have so little time for self-care in that definition. Caregivers are focused on the people that they're caring for. So we prefer to think of it as self-health because our health is so critically entwined with our ability to provide care. So if we're not healthy, who is going to care for us or our loved ones? So we're going to give you some alternatives. Penny, come on up.
Hi, Penny.
So I am going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We so appreciate you taking the time at the end of this conference to be with us. So we do appreciate your presence. So to follow up on, as Lisa talked about the idea of self-health, we came upon this concept of what does our best self look like in the context of self-health, and what that looks like for each of us, because we each define that for ourselves based on what our values are, where we are in our caregiving experience, our personalities, and it's not something that is linear or static. It's constantly fluctuating, and we adjust just as we adjust during our caregiving experience. So in this graphic, I'm not sure if you can see the descriptions that are written, but included are things like our physical environment, nutrition, spirituality, relationships, movement and rest, personal growth. And in the center of this, all of this is our mindfulness and awareness. So I was thinking about that because one of the things that I learned it was actually in the certified caregiving consultant course, was this idea that we can define what that means. We have permission to define that outside of when we hear the term, and that's one of the reasons why Lisa had made the suggestion, why don't we use this term self-health versus self-care, because we have terms that we hear constantly that end up having a connotation to them that we resist. And so this is a way of opening up space for us to be able to redefine it. So this was a learning process for me. So I'm here as a panelist, but I'm also just, it's more about just sharing what I learned. And one of the questions I asked myself was, how are self-health and awareness related? And how did I experience that as a caregiver for my father-in-law? One of the images that came to mind for me of my experience was what happens, many of you I'm sure have heard about the frog slowly to boiling to death in the pot of water. And so being the frog sitting in the water of caregiving, and the water getting hotter and hotter, and just not really realizing until at the point of intensity that I'm boiling to death. And why was that? Why would I allow myself to be boiled to death? And so the answer that I came up with anyway was, it was a lack of awareness. In that circle you saw in the previous slide. So that lack of awareness and mindfulness of my experience, which I made a new connection just today in one of the earlier sessions that I attended, which was about, it was the male perspective, and one of the panelists said that mindfulness was related to being present in the moment. So in my experience, I for the most part, I wasn't present in the moment. As my father-in-law's condition continued to deteriorate, and he was diagnosed with Parkinson's, he had Parkinson's, lived with it for over 30 years, so it was the last 12 years of his life that I was his caregiver. And in 2015, I suddenly lost my mom unexpectedly. We had no idea that she was as sick as she was. It turns out she was hiding a cardiac condition from us, and we found her passed away in her bed in the middle of in Texas, in the middle of what was a very bad snow and ice storm. And so we were completely unprepared for it. And so being her administrator and having to take care of everything after her death while also having to take care of my father-in-law, I did not really allow myself time to grieve. So I was not mindful, and I was not present in the moment. So back to the question, how did I define this self-health? Since I wasn't mindful and I wasn't aware. Because of my mom's passing, there was a gift that I didn't know was a gift until the last few weeks of my father-in-law's life, when I had been fighting to make him better. He'd been in intensive care and had aspirating pneumonia. At this point, he was in a memory care home. And I was just doing everything I could to get him to eat because I knew he loved to eat. He ate a full meal, breakfast, lunch, dinner, always had to have snacks around the house. We had candy bowls full of Snickers and peppermints. The refrigerator had to be full of pies. We had ice cream. We had just every kind of sweet. We'd bring him Mexican food. We'd go out and have Mexican food. We had Jason's Deli. You get the point. Loved to eat. So I was trying to get him to eat. And he would take a bite and just couldn't eat anymore. And I suddenly realized, you know what? He's not going to eat anymore. What can I do for him? and I decided that we were going to go for a walk. I'd gotten in one of those Jerry chairs, and so wheeled that out the back of the memory care home. There was a little path that went behind through the neighborhood. We started walking down the path. He'd been almost non-responsive at this point. And I decided that in spite of the fact that these people in this neighborhood were going to think I was crazy, that I was going to just start singing a song. And I knew I was going to have to sing it loud because my father-in-law was hard of hearing, which meant that there were going to be people who overheard and were wondering, you know, what was going on here. But I did it anyway. And so I started singing one of our favorites. It was an Ella Fitzgerald song. And it was You Do Something to Me, for anyone who might know that song. Anyway, I won't sing it for you today, but my father-in-law raised his hand and started moving it in time as I sung to him. And in that moment, that was my moment of self-health, when I became aware and I was fully present with him in a way that I had not been able to be with my mother when she passed. And that was a gift that she gave me. So that I realized how important it was to be with someone in that moment of transition. And that is why a big part of the reason why I'm okay today is because I had that moment. And that's my story.
Thank you, Dannelle. I have to say, I have to stop for a moment, and I have to tell all of you that Penny and I met at the annual conference last year and shared the stage, and have become the deepest and most profound relationship I've had in a very long time. And Dannelle joined us this year, and she's a part of the community. She's a sister with us. Thank you for sharing your story. As I said, I'm Lisa B. Capp, and I'm completely exhausted for being here for 2 days and being emotionally out for 2 days. So if you'll grant me, I'm going to do more reading than I am doing it from my head. I hope you don't mind. I lost my mom to dementia in the spring of 2015, and even today I continue to grieve her death, because we know that the end of caregiving isn't freedom, it's grief. Something I did during her decline, however, I found helped me tremendously, both in her decline and after her death. It was a simple thing, really. It didn't take much time away from my caregiving responsibilities. It didn't require much skill. It could have been done virtually anywhere, but it left me with something of great value at the end of the journey that my mom and I took together. What, you may ask, is it? It was jotting, like you might do with items you need to pick up at the grocery store. You write it down, you jot it. I started jotting down the raw emotions I felt as my mom's behavior became increasingly unpredictable. I did it because I'm basically OCD. I was searching, however, for patterns in her behavior. If I did or said this, would I get a predictable response from my mom, either in words or in actions? I now know the answer to that question. The world became permanently and predictably irrational for all of us that were living with dementia. I continued to jot, however. The jotting exercise became one my husband and I would share over a glass of wine. Okay, many glasses of wine. It helped us to better understand how caregiving was affecting our relationship together. It helped us to find our trigger points and give us escape routes. Although we needed to escape, we needed to still provide care for my mom and safety. My jottings became my meditations and my mindfulness. I could jot on any size piece of paper. I could jot on the corner of a piece of paper. I could jot on a cocktail napkin. I could jot on the magazines in a doctor's office, or the many, many forms the doctors forced us to fill out. I'd be present for my mom. I'd take a deep breath. I'd lower my shoulders, and with pen in hand, I'd jot something down about the moment. It could be about her, about me, about the unfair circumstances we faced together. It could really have been about anything. And what I have after her passing as a foundation to others I work with in their caregiving journey, which can often feel like a very dark and long tunnel, what I have are our moments. Her bright green eyes, my sense of guilt and isolation in caregiving, the moments she could say I love you, with and ultimately without words, the advice of a caring doctor, the smile from someone who walked towards us and understood what we were going through. The first time she forgot my birthday, the way her face would light up when she saw my dog Joey, not me, my dog Joey. The helplessness of care, the hopelessness of disease, the strength of letting go, and the acceptance that she's now forever reunited with my dad. You see, jotting allowed me to find perspective in moments of our pain and gives me peace in moments of her memory. I've learned now that it's my responsibility to help light the way for other caregivers since my mom's passing. And I believe together we can do that because I know there are an awful lot of former family caregivers in the room. Thank you. I'd like to turn it over to my friend Penny, who's going to tell us about her journey.
Thank you, Lisa. It's such a pleasure to be back here again this year. My mother was an exceptional woman. She could fix just about anything. The smell of her food would just make you drool from afar. And she was just a beautiful person who loved helping others. And she taught me that as a child. If your neighbor was in need, if your neighbor needed something, you reached out and you helped that neighbor. And we do that today, but not often enough. I loved my mom very, very deeply. She died February 8th, 2014, and I was her caregiver along with my spouse and my son for over a decade. When my mom came and lived with us in the beginning, it was wonderful. I had gone through a surgery and it was really bad. And the way that we got my mother to come and live with us was the fact that I need help with your grandson now. He's growing, he's getting bigger, I'm getting weaker and slower, and I need to recoup from my surgery. Now at that time, my mother was doing very, very well. And it took about 1.5 years before she started to quickly go downhill. And I didn't understand why or what was going on because the doctors never mentioned the A word. They never said, your mom has Alzheimer's or your mom has dementia. And I began to notice a change in her personality. And caring for my mother became a very difficult journey as her decline continued. Until eventually my mother passed in my dining room. We set up hospice. And I held her hand and I sang her favorite hymns. And we had a hospice individual come in to help prepare her for her journey to be with God. So, my mother leaves me. My shadow is now gone. The person that followed me from room to room, the person that would ask the same questions over and over and over again was no longer here with me. And I was not sure who I was to become now that I was no longer a caregiver. I mean, I had a husband, I had a son, but they didn't need me 24/7. They didn't need to tell me, you know, maybe you should go to the bathroom now, or maybe it's time to eat food, or, you know, just guiding someone in the way that they needed to be guided. We got to the point where my mother just wouldn't eat at all, so we kept her alive basically on Ensure and protein shakes and all of those groovy things, and I miss her, is what I can say, is that I miss her. So what happens when your caree passes? How do you feel? There was an emptiness deep inside of me. There was a hole in my heart, and nothing could fill it. And I thought the days of my showered tears were over once she was gone, but little did I know, the grieving was something that I had not anticipated for. I mean, honestly, hadn't I grieved enough watching the decline of my mother? Hadn't I grieved enough watching her essentially starve herself to death? No, I hadn't, because when her physical body was gone, there was the hole that needed to be filled. What do I do? How do I go about finding me again? And that was very difficult. And in trying to find myself, I blamed myself for everything that I thought I should have done better. I blamed myself for everything I think I was supposed to have done that perhaps didn't get done. Maybe I spoke too harshly, rushed her too quickly, all the time not realizing that, you know, the disease was in possession of my mother. But I realized that I had to move on. We all have to continue to live. We can't stop living just because our loved one passes. So what do? Well, I had to sit down and I had to reevaluate my life and say, these are the things that I had an interest in prior to becoming a caregiver, and these are the things that I want to go back to or delete from my life. And I think all of us have to do that. And I couldn't get to that point until I stopped criticizing myself. And once I stopped criticizing myself, I could forgive myself because I did the best I could with the tools and the resources that I had at my disposal at that time. And I began to realize, as I would hear my mother's voice in the back of my head, if it weren't for you, I don't know what I'd do. I probably wouldn't be here because I don't think my other children care. Now, of course they did. They just didn't want to deal with it. But I forgave myself. I forgave myself for the anger. I forgave myself for the rudeness. And I forgave my siblings for not being present, for not being willing to help, for not wanting to help. And I forgave my mom for having Alzheimer's and dementia because it wasn't her fault. But the disease was very debilitating, as most of us in this room know. So I stopped criticizing myself. And I began to realize that, you know what, my mother would want me to be happy. She would want me to continue to smile. You know, she would want me to live my life with laughter and with compassion. And she would want me to love and forgive myself. And that is what I've done. I've learned to heal through the transition of grief. And I found my best self after I forgave myself. And I also found a new career. I became a certified Alzheimer's disease and dementia care trainer because it is very important to me that individuals that have Alzheimer's or dementia live the best possible life that they can live. And they can do that if the people caring for them are trained properly. And that is my goal.
Awesome. Thanks, Penny. So you've heard stories from each of us, and what these 2 days have been about and wonderfully rich about is the storytelling. Dannelle and I both shared with you concepts about our feelings during caregiving and Penny after caregiving. And some of it's painful, But the common thread that runs through all of these stories is a message of hope. And so what we want to do is we want to recognize that message of hope, and we want to take these concepts and talk about how you can apply through self-health to find your best self. And we're going to do that first. You are going to talk to us about essential oils and aromatherapy.
Yeah, so I am so pleased to be able to speak to you about essential oils because I've been using essential oils for, let's see, oh my goodness, probably 27 years. So since I was in my teens, and I'll be 47 this month. And so they've been a part of my life for most of my life. And it never really occurred to me that they could be used in a caregiving situation or experience or through grief until once again, in retrospect, as a former family caregiver. And one of the things that I think is so beautiful about using essential oils is that it's not about suppressing or fixing or taking away an emotion. With essential oils, it's about helping us to process emotions. So an essential oil like, if you want to go to the next slide, I think it has stress-reducing oils. I think most people are familiar with oils such as lavender, rosemary, peppermint, and ylang-ylang are all stress-reducing oils. And what's interesting is it doesn't really, there are certain oils that do have chemical properties that work through the olfactory nerves and can be absorbed into your body to work in specific ways. But I would recommend experimenting to see what works for you. So it's kind of like your taste buds. You may like a certain kind of food or a certain kind of taste that appeals to you and works for you. And the same is true of essential oils. Just a quick little note, and when you're using essential oils, then it is important to make sure that you're using them properly and that you dilute them. There's some additional links to that type of information in the handout, but it's not something you'd want to apply directly onto your skin unless it's an oil like, unless you're allergic like Tom to lavender. For the rest of us, except Tom, you can apply lavender directly onto your skin. The same is true of tea tree and helichrysum. But the remainder of the essential oils, you want to make sure to dilute them. So just a quick side note about that. Some of the grief balancing oils include frankincense and rose. And I'll tell you a interesting story about frankincense and why I recommend experimenting with different oils to see what might work for you. And that is that, again, you know, I've been using essential oils for decades. And when my mom passed away, I became attracted to frankincense. And it wasn't until after I started using the frankincense that I learned that it was used specifically for grief, because I'd never used it in that context before. Isn't that interesting? And a friend of mine who shared with me that she had started using essential oils, she wasn't familiar with them. She was just trying out different things. And we were talking about them, and she said, yeah, I started using frankincense because I was just experimenting with different oils, and she said that after she started using it, that she cried for 2 days and she didn't know why. Isn't that fascinating? I just found it absolutely fascinating. So the idea is that it's helping us, the idea of self-health is we're processing the emotion. And essential oils and aromatherapy can help us to do that. And I trust that you are all fully capable of getting information about how to use it. You can diffuse it, I'll just like, fling it around on my head, or however you want to use it, whatever works for you. So I'm going to just, do we have time to quickly open it up for any questions specific to essential oils? Okay, so we'd like to open it up real quick. Oh, and one more important thing. Kathy Parks Jones, it's Kathy Parks Jones and not Kathy Jones Parks, right? Is a member of caregiving.com. She's very active in the online chat community there, and she has a fantastic essential oil chat on caregiving.com that takes place on Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And so if you would like to connect with her, then I highly recommend Kathy's chat on caregiving.com. So, but just quickly wanted to just open it up to any questions that you guys may have about essential oils before we move on to the next section. Okay. Oh, did someone have a question?
Right?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, I'm blinded by the light.
Yeah, the light is quite bright.
By the light, wrapped up like a...
All right. I can't really film myself, but question. How much would it cost for a basic startup if you wanted to get into it? What's a guesstimate of a price point?
So it depends on the essential oil. So you can, and I'm so glad you brought that up because it is important to point out the different qualities of oils that are available. So you have some really nice oils that are available through companies like doTERRA or Young Living, or there are some other brands. The main thing to look for is that it is that it's a pure essential oil. Organic is even better. Of course, that does raise the price point because now that it's become more mainstream, unlike 10 years ago or 20 years ago, then there are a lot more people wanting to get into the game and making synthetic products. So, for example, a lot of the candles that you might buy that say lavender on them, it's a synthetic form, and so that's actually detrimental to your health rather than the opposite. But to your point about the price point, so something like lavender you could get for $12 versus something like the frankincense, I would say on the low end, might cost you $28. The benefit of that is that the good news is that you can get different sizes. So generally speaking, it's going to come in a 30 ml size bottle. But if you say you were to look and get a starter pack, you might be able to get a starter pack that comes in 10 ml bottles. And so that would help reduce the overall cost. The other good news is that particularly when stored properly, it's not exposed to a lot of heat or to the sun. And usually it's going to come in a dark brown or blue bottle, so it'll limit the sun exposure. It lasts a long time, right? So you don't need a lot. In most instances, you could just use one drop, especially for the purpose of just aromatherapy. Yes, Shirley.
I love taking baths. and essential oils are something that I like to put in. Is there any type of website that lists what help each oil does when you take a bath?
So there, let's see. Yeah, so I put a link here to some of the essential oils and different ways to use them and specific uses for the oils. If you use it in the bath, it's just like if you just waft it in front of your nose, you're going to get the same benefits. And I love using essential oils in the bath too. So it would really be more about if you're using an oil that needs to be diluted. So anything besides the lavender, tea tree, helichrysum, then you just want to make sure that it's fully mixed in. Or sometimes I'll put Epsom salts in my bath first. Yeah, and then put the essential oils directly into the Epsom salts, and then that helps to diffuse everything.
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect. And this information is in the app, in the handout, so you can find the link there. Thank you, Dannelle. And now Penny's going to talk to us about meditation. We can't think of a better way to sort of wrap the conference than to talk about meditation.
I'm going to stand up because I've got the 4 o'clock doldrums. Meditation. I most certainly can. So what is meditation? Meditation is mind without agitation. We want to be as stress-free as possible, and that is very, very difficult in today's time. So one of the things that can help us through is meditation. And it's so easy and simple to do. And there are many benefits to meditation. There really, truly are. Consistency is the key. If we can start out maybe spending 60 seconds, who doesn't have 60 seconds to improve their mindset, to clear their mind, to help their body? 60 seconds consistently, and you will see that there will be improvements in your overall health. Meditation helps us to decrease stress. When we're stressed, we're agitated. We meditate. It calms us down. Studies have shown that meditation helps decrease our blood pressure, and it increases our immune system. So why wouldn't we meditate? 60 seconds every day? Oh, I'm busy, I can't do it. Do it in the car while you're driving to work. You know what you can do? You can meditate. So why don't we do something, because you guys look like you need a change of pace. Let's all stand up for just a quick moment, if you don't mind. Did you grab it?
It's right next to you.
Thank you. All right, and if you have any type of physical ailments, you don't have to participate if you don't want to, that's fine. But what I'd like for you to do is to just kind of spread your legs slightly apart, wiggle your little self, shake the shoulders out. You know, let's roll that neck out, crack, crack around slowly, gently. And let's breathe, taking some deep breaths. Now rotate it on the other side. Very slowly. Continue to breathe. Now what I'd like for you to do is just to stretch up. Just stretch up, big and strong. Both arms as high as you can comfortably go. And just do little slow movements of your arms overhead. And breathe and release. Rotate backwards a little bit. Shake it out and bring it down. That's wonderful, wonderful. So we just stretched it out. Have a seat, guys, have a seat. So I hope you feel a little bit better, because I know I do. I have to get ready to jump on the plane, so, you know, it's all good. So we just did a quick stretching exercise, and that's great to do in the morning to get all those kinks out. That could be your meditation right there, to be honest with you, if you wanted it to be, right? But I want to talk to you about something that's called mindful meditation. And mindful meditation is nothing more than being present in the moment and focusing on what is surrounding us. Let's just take an example. Let's say you like tea and you've had a frustrating day and you're going to sit down at 3 o'clock with that nice hot cup of tea. Smell the aroma. It's your favorite cup of tea. Feel the warmth. Feel the cup in your hand and the warmth of the tea. Enjoy the color of it, the taste of it, and focus on nothing else. And that is mindful meditation. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to do a mantra. A mantra. Mantras are powerful groups of words that we can use and repeat. A mantra can be anything that you want it to be. Let's say you're a jogger and your goal is to get stronger and faster. So while you're jogging, before you stretch, you take your deep breaths, you're out there, you're hustling, you're hitting the pavement, and your mantra could simply be, every day, in every way, I'm getting faster and faster. And that would be the mantra you could say as you're running. So a mantra can be anything we want it to be. Right now, we're going to do a mantra. And the mantra that I chose is called So Hum. I just even like saying it, So Hum. Now, what the mantra means is simply, I am. And those are the two most powerful words an individual can say, because whatever follows after I am is what we actually bring into the universe. We bring it into us. So the idea is, you want to keep your mind peaceful. We want to be positive. We want goodness. We want love, light, health. I am healthy. I am beautiful. I am strong. Whatever that I am is for you. But just to begin, for right now, we are going to meditate, and we're going to do the mantra, I am, and we are going to use the words, so hum. So you're going to breathe in and out. Take a couple deep breaths again, please. And I'm going to hit the bell. When I hit the bell, we can all start saying the words, so hum. Got it? Out loud, okay? Yeah, let's do it out loud, and then you'll see what the results are like. So hum. 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 How do we feel? Do you feel any lighter? Do you feel the same? It's okay. Relaxed. That's the goal, relaxed. We want to be less stressed. So meditation can help us do that. And again, you only need a few minutes, and you can do it anywhere, anytime. Namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you, Penny.
Thank you, Penny. So you have all blown us away. Penny and I did the last session last year at the very end of the conference in a tiny little room at the end of the hallway. And I think, Shirley, there were 5 of us there. So you have blown us away by your presence, by your mindfulness here with us to share these thoughts. We're wrapping up. I'm getting the high sign. So we have a parting gift for all of you, and because so many of you are here, we're going to break it up so that everybody gets to leave with some essential oils. And these essential oils that you'll leave with are airplane friendly because they're in a size you can carry on your flight. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you.